It's not about what you have. It's about who you have. It's not about where you live. It's about how you live. And it's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momenticide Podcast, episode 8. Today, I've got on here a guy, he's built hundreds of units, hundreds of apartment units, but he's also touched schools. He's been in the construction industry since he was like a toddler. We got to partner with him on our 84 unit. Without further ado, let's welcome Duel Christiansen to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a ride. Right. You and I, we've known each other now, what, 3 years?
3 years. Yeah.
Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
We've been there for the birth of 2 children together.
That's right.
We're both going into our third together.
Yeah, that's right.
So we've known each other for a minute here.
Yeah, it's been great. So, it's one of those things, right? When you go into any relationship or partnership, especially when there's a lot of money behind it, you know, it's great to be able to do that with people that you like, creating win-win situations. And it's definitely been a relationship like that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, getting to grow up in this industry. So a little bit of background is our father, my father, he's been in construction, you know, his entire life. Yeah. That's how I got my name, right? Dually truck. Right.
So, I didn't know that piece. There you go. I mean, you were even named.
I was even named because of it, right? So he was going to buy some new dually trucks for the business, and I think I was due within like say 12 weeks.
No
right.
way.
So my grandmother's pissed. She's like, Scott, you know what? You need to quit spending all your money on these dually trucks. You got to spend it on the dually you have coming. Yeah. So ironically, you know, my name is Anthony. Yeah. I've never been called that. No. Day in my life. I don't even sign things that, which I probably should. But, you know, so, so starting in this, it's the only thing I've ever known. Yeah. It's the only thing I've ever done. The only other job I ever had, it's still construction related, was I worked for a landscaper when I was, I think, 16 for a couple months. Yeah.
I mean, it's still construction.
Beyond that, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I've never had the opportunity to experience anything else. I never would, because this has afforded me, you know, relationships that'll last forever. This has afforded me to go places, see things, you know, I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was chartered on a private jet by a developer, flown down to Southern Oregon, across Washington. I was back home by 4:00 to eat dinner with my kids. Yeah. 2 weeks ago. I mean, those relationships that you build and you establish, you know, it's the trust that we're talking about. And as soon as you kind of work with each other enough and you realize who an individual is, you can begin that, what I would call out of the dating phase. Yeah. Right. Into that marriage. Yeah. Right. Now it's a two-way street. What's good for you is good for me and vice versa. Yeah. We're in it together.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've literally been in the construction industry since you were as early as you could remember, since you could walk. Talk us through that a little bit. I mean, have you been able to touch every trade, or what's the experience like that?
Yeah. So, interesting enough. So, I mean, obviously not a lot of people get the same experience. Very fortunate. I want to start with that. Very fortunate, very blessed. Great father. Greatest man I know, actually. Still to this day, I mean, I'll give him a kiss every time I see him, which is every day. So I kiss him a lot. But anyways, we got started full time, probably the summer of 10 years old. Yeah. Cleaning. Yeah. Right. Guy named Dave Jasper would pick me up, worked for my dad. He would pick me up at 6:30 a.m. I would have a lunch packed and he would bring me home every day. It could be at 4:30. It could be at 6. It was when their day was over. Yeah. That cleaning graduated into getting to be somewhat of I wouldn't even call it an apprentice, a helper. I wasn't even at that level, right? You're 13 years old. You're working summers, you know, after school as it happens when you don't have sports, framing and setting up for concrete. That graduated into me being a full-blown running framing crews at 16, 17, right? For an example here, Visit Bend, downtown Bend, I framed that at 17 with 2 guys. What was PV powered at the time, framed that with 3 guys, hung all the rock on that. I worked at Central Oregon. You can drive around and I can put a finger and say, hey, we've been here. We've touched that, you know? So very fortunate, worked in a lot of the trades, everything from concrete, framing, drywall, finish work, flooring, residential. My own house is obviously electrical, plumbing, mechanical. You know, my own house right now, I'm doing all my own HVAC. Yeah. Just because, right? It's like, why not? Yeah. You know, because I can do it. Yeah. So, and on top of that, we also own our own excavation and concrete companies. Yeah. Right. Concrete companies now owned by a great family friend of ours, Mike Laproth. And so very fortunate in that aspect to be exposed to so many things. And so when I got out of the trades per se, I was given a ultimatum by my dad. Yep. You can either go to college or you can work for somebody else. And I was very fortunate to go to school. I got a full academic ride to Boise State. Boom, done, right? Sports were out. I had too many concussions, you know? And so I got into intramural sports there, construction management program. I got a bachelor's in that, and then a business, and also an accounting minor.
Yeah.
So, while I was in college, I worked almost full time, doing construction.
Yeah.
So and I got a degree in it.
Yeah.
And it's been the only thing that I've ever known.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been you've been in it, and it's been an obsession. And from what I can tell, when I met you, one of the things that really attracted me to you and partnering with you was the depth of knowledge, yes, but also the obsession, just literally the obsession with what you're doing, the obsession with construction, the trade, the knowledge, the people. It literally came out of you. I was like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He has the experience to back it up. And then you've been able to, for that 84 unit and many other projects, really execute on that. So it makes sense that you've grown up in it, because it shows. For people who are wondering, like, how old are you now and what's...
So I don't tell many people this. Yeah. I just shaved into a mustache recently, because most people think I'm in my mid 40s. Yeah. I just turned 31 recently. I'll be 32 this next year.
What's it like being a 31-year-old now running, major projects, doing 10s, 20s, $30 million projects?
There's something that my old man told me, and it stands true. Age is only a matter of mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. I've spent my entire life telling people 2, 3, 4, 5 times my age what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And so for me, it's natural. So I think I use this as an example. I've worked with guys that are the best superintendent. His name is Jim Hosebein. Works for Anderson Construction. I previously worked there doing multifamily, worked at HP, College of Idaho's athletic complex out of Nampa. Worked with this guy named Jim Hosebein. He's the kind of guy that you look up to. You learn, right? And you don't necessarily learn the nuts and bolts, but you learn how to manage people. Yeah. And he was a key to my success, I would say. Watching and learning. And then I worked with other guys who were awful, right? At a young age, I got to experience an $8.5 million lawsuit. Yeah. Right. And that's unfortunate. Not many people get the experience to go through that, but I was able to go through it, understand, learn. And fortunately, me being me, I was able to help get that lawsuit down to a couple million. Yeah. Right. And so these learning experiences and age, again, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I always tell everybody that, because I've been working with guys that, I'll use an example would be, let's say we're laying out, 84 units. Yep. There is different ways to do it. Right. And we all know that. However, there might be one way, as to frame a 4-story building in 4 weeks. Yep. Well, there's a reason why we can do it that way, because we changed the methods. And so I'll talk to these guys that are 40, 50, 60 years old, and they go, no, we're going to do it this way. And I'll say, well, that's the wrong way, right? Do you want to make money and get out of here? Or do you want to stay around here and you're just, going to do okay? Yeah. So, I think that the age thing really comes from paying attention more than anything. Yeah. I mean, you live the growth mindset, right? You learn, you find some good mentors who can show you exactly what to do. And then at the same time, because the way your mind works, you're also watching people and you're saying, hey, this is what not to do. And you're fast tracking your experience right there, right? You're saying, hey, now when I'm working for Anderson, there's a big lawsuit here, learned a bunch of stuff, what not to do, also learned a bunch of great stuff on what to do, and then added your own personality, your own spice. I've watched you I've watched you run a job site. I've watched the way that you communicate. It's firm, it's kind, it's like no BS, and we're going to get this project done, right? So, yeah. I mean, it's that idea of you get more with honey than you do vinegar. It holds true to almost every scenario. However, you have to understand your audience, right? So when I'm on a job, I'm a different man at home with my wife and my kids than I am at work, right? You have to have that ability to be who you need to be in the moment, right? In this idea that you got to treat everybody the same. That's a bunch of horse shit. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I don't treat a grown man that has an ego bigger than, anybody I know the same that I'm going to treat an 18-year-old kid getting into the trades who just wants to learn. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the idea that you treat everyone the same in this industry doesn't really exist, in my opinion. You treat people to the way that they need to be treated to succeed. Yeah. So I'll use my own employees. Some guys, they need to be told, I'm disappointed. Yeah. I'm disappointed in you. And here is why. Yeah. Other guys don't respond to that, right? They respond to, hey, come here. We're going to go over what you did wrong. And I'm going to show you how much you just, caused us in regards to time, money, and more importantly, in relationships. Because now we've got to tell people that we're not going to make it because of you. So there's two different ways, right, to approach that. One guy takes the light nudge. One guy needs the hard approach. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And leadership is a fine balance of figuring that out, right? Finding a way to bring out the best of the team that's around you, right? And so I think you're 100% right. Like the way that you communicate with one person is going to be completely different than the way you communicate. Just like the love languages, right? The communication language and style is the same thing, right? So different people need different things, especially from their leaders. How many employees do you guys have in your company now?
Right now, probably around 20. Yeah. 20. And then obviously there's some other entities out there that have another 10 to 15.
Yeah. And what's the breakdown? You got 20 employees. If somebody's trying to figure it out, you guys got, what's office look like?
So
what's
office
the field
is
look
only,
like?
so how we're structured very differently. And I mean this in a really good way. I've had opportunities. I've worked for a company called Skanska. Mm-hmm. They're one of the largest in the world. Yep. They have their own bank. Yeah. And I got to do a couple of massive projects with them. I worked for a company called Sladen out of Staten, Oregon. They do a lot of infrastructure, bridges, fish ladders. Yep. And then I worked for a company called Anderson. The best companies I've worked for have more guys in the field that know what they're doing than guys in the office that are really good at sending emails. Yeah. So we're structured that way in regards to, we don't have a lot of guys in the office that know how to send good emails. We have really good guys in the field to cover our ass and yours. Yeah. So our structure is there's only 4 people in the office. It's myself, my dad, one of my brothers, actually my sister's in there as well, and then our main office manager. And then in the field we've got 3 main superintendents, and we've got a couple foremen, and everyone else is general journeyman. Yeah. At a slew of trades. So for instance, since we do our own excavation, right? We have our own concrete company. Again, it's owned one of my dad's best friends, Mike, owns it. My dad started it. And then we do all our own red iron erections. So we're doing a UPS facility right now up in Linwood, Washington. We're supplying the building on that one. So we design and sew big red iron buildings. So we'll go in and we erect them ourselves. Yep. Right now we're framing these apartments ourselves down off Colorado.
Because you've got the field, your whole point is like you've got the field experts to make it happen. And then the family, you're really a true family business where the office side, the brain side, behind the business side of the building, that is run by the office, small, lean, your family.
Very lean.
And then your field guys with all the experience are there so that you can execute on self-perform on excavation, self-perform on, it's a pretty smart business model, and I think that,
once you get to a certain size, I don't think it would work as well. Yeah. So I think if you keep it sub 30 employees, you can do it that way as a GC. Once you get beyond that, you really have to have more in the office on the checks and balances in regards to paperwork. Yeah. And again, nothing against it. It's just, we have found that if you can take one really good superintendent, he can also be a PM. Yep. He can also be a PE. Yeah. He can also be a journeyman framer. Yeah. So Dave, who ran your 84
just unit, so any listeners who are like, what did he just say? So superintendent, break it down for me. Superintendent, what is it?
So how most jobs are structured is we have a superintendent. The superintendent, he's been there, done that. Yep. Right. In regards to all the trades, his mind, he understands the process. He's 32 steps ahead of everybody else out there.
Yeah. He's in charge of the site. He's
ultimately the job succeeds and fails typically because of that individual. Yep. Right. And then you have what's a project manager, what we call a project manager. That individual is responsible a lot of time for maintaining the relationship with the owner. Yep. He's the buffer from the job to the ownership side, does all the contracts, does all the buyout, is the buffer with the subcontractors. Because when that superintendent needs to be the hammer, somebody has to be there to pick up the pieces to make sure that everyone is still okay. Yeah. And then we have project engineer, project admin is what we call them. And they're really responsible for supporting those 2 positions. Yep. And then general labor and a foreman underneath those guys.
Perfect. Yeah. Just so everybody knows from a breakdown side, when you're running a large project, those are key players. And one of the things that you can see happen sometimes when you're going and doing your due diligence, let's say you wanted to do an 84 unit, right? When we were going to do that project as the developer, 1, we have our own general contracting business, but 2, we're starting to look at which general contractors can actually handle this, right? And then what does their team look like? And one thing that I think happens with a lot of people sometimes when they're doing that due diligence, they get tricked and baited by the lowest bid. Yes. And then they get eaten up. You can see like they get tricked and baited by the lowest bid or scope gaps, right? And they don't have enough, like if you're going out to push a project and somebody tells you they can build it for 20% less than what's realistic, you're probably going to have a scope gap there and you're probably going to get in trouble. We see that unfold like in a time you and I we partnered together on that 84 unit in what would arguably be a very difficult time to build. COVID, supply chain issues, labor challenges, and while other people were using that as an excuse to have long timelines and long delays, you guys were able to still perform. I remember from a timeline side, we had there's one good friend of ours, took him 3 years with the general contractor that he hired to build a 24 unit, and you guys performed 84 units in 12 months. So the team, right? Like, I mean, I would just ask you there, what is the difference? Like, how does something like that unfold versus how come you guys can do it in 12 months?
I think for you, a lot of it is you as an owner and a developer and a general contractor. You understand how important it is to give us the reins. And a lot of the work that we do, I don't want people to think that it was magic. It wasn't magic. A lot of it was pre-planning, right? A good plan goes a long ways. And entrusting me to do my job goes a long ways. And I'll use the example of we compete against not a lot, but we compete a fair amount against some of the bigger GCs in town. Right. And the reason that they'll beat us is simply because of their size. But what I tell every owner is I go into those meetings and I say, the guy that's going to run your job is actually going to be me. That's what I used to do. But now you have me and my name's on the door. So what do you think is going to happen? That job won't fail. I guarantee you it won't fail. So when I look at something like that on a 12-month basis, I think a lot of it went down to you trusted us, which is huge, to allow us to succeed. So for instance, let's use the example. You and I were talking, we're watching the lumber market, right? It's in our best interest to help financially the project in any way, shape, or form, right? So we say, hey, lumber is starting to make a drop. Let's watch it. But be prepared. We're going to stroke a $1.3 million check and we're going to buy all the lumber package. So we're going to buy all our rough carpentry, all our sheet goods, all our siding packs. We're going to start acquiring that now and stroke those checks when the lumber market dips. So what we did was we created our own lumber yard off Highway 97, right in the north end of Redmond. And we did that. Most owners wouldn't do that. They'd say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to pay the interest on that $1.3 million when it sits there. Well, that $1.3 million we saved us $527,000, I think, by doing it that way. And we mill directed everything. So now there's no delay to go vertical, right? And then we got in really early with you, which is what we prefer to do. We don't do a lot of hard bid because we're never the low bid because we're always going to tell you what's missing. I can go through it immediately and say, hey guys, you're missing, 7% of the contract value is missing in your drawings. It's a scope gap. We're going to fill that in now, but my competitors aren't going to.
And then they're going to change order you. And so that's the point I'm trying to bring home is pay for the knowledge and the expertise and don't fall for the low bid, because unless you're certain that there's no scope gap there, you're usually going to get in trouble. So.
You usually will. I'll use the example. There's a project down the street that we bid, and that project that we bid, it's a gas station. And we do gas stations every once in a while. It's not something we go after, but certain clients, they'll say, hey, Scott, Duel, you guys just do everything for us. We're going to build a new convenience store and fuel station, wherever in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, North Dakota. We work all over. We'll go do it. Okay. Sounds good. And so we've got them pretty well figured out, right? Gas stations are not difficult. So we bid this fuel station down the road from our project. And this is a great example. And there's 3 of us bidding. It's me, another fuel station out of over in the valley, and another one from here. I'm not going to say their name. And anyways, we go into the meeting. I say, hey guys, here's what it's going to take. Here's the open book. Here's everything that's missing in your job. And I said, it's going to be, I think it was 5 months. You can turnkey those in 5 months. And they say, okay, so we're the middle bid, and this low bid came in like 20% less. I think it was roughly 20. And they say, hey, Duel, you got to get 20%. I said, well, 20% doesn't exist, and that's just not how we work. We're not going to buy the job to change order you. We're not going to do that. It's not how we operate. So great. Have good luck with your project. Well, a 5-month project is going on almost a year right now because of that. And if you listen to what the city officials have to say about that project, because we know all the city officials in Redmond, Bend, Deschutes County, Jefferson County, Prineville, Crick County, everywhere. We work everywhere in town. And so it's one of those unfortunate series of events where it was the bait. And it was, and by the way, now they're substantially beyond what we were.
Exactly.
Right? Because now those GCs, they bid for 5 months, they just doubled. Right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, but wait. So they came in low. The owner said, hey, I want you to find 20%. You said there is not 20% in here. They went with low bid. They doubled their timeline.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went over your original bid, your original cost, and their interest costs. That that's just construction costs. We don't even have visibility on what it costs them for not opening yet. Interest carry, right? I mean, that's a big problem that starts just killing
that's the
developers.
lawsuits that are born out of. Yeah, and so when we get into those scenarios, I can usually meet with a client and tell who they are and what they're about and go, this will be a good relationship or bad.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a way that we don't hard bid stuff typically ever. I do banks. Banks are quick. They're awesome. They're just fun to do. So we'll hard bid banks with them. And so when we do those, and another interesting dynamic I want to back up a little bit is, as a general contractor, we also general contract for other general contractors, like from out of state, out of town, other places. So we do these banks, but it's not our relationship. Another general contractor hires us to go do the job, but the banks never know that we're the ones that are actually the general contractors.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
There's
out there,
a lot of this in the construction industry that go on. So people don't know this side of it, but you might know the person, but that person's not who's building your project. At face value, they are.
Yeah. They have the contract and then they sub out the contract.
The whole thing. And then it's unfortunate, because things are now getting marked up substantial amounts. And it's interesting.
It's part of the game.
It really is, and it's unfortunate sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it happens on the small level. Like you see it even with framers, right? If one framing crew is slow, they'll pull their other framing crew. And so it happens all the time where like you have a guy who's essentially just become a broker of labor. They get the contract and then they bring this crew in or that crew in. It's happening all over the place. Everyone's trying to make their entrepreneurial spirit go. So it is what it is there. Yeah. Let's talk about like tips and tricks specifically on the construction side. I want to start with like a single family house for somebody who's trying to get in the ground up game, buy a piece of land, build from the ground up. And they're trying to figure out, am I going to build this myself? Am I going to hire a builder? What type of due diligence? We'll start there. Like what type of due diligence should somebody do around the builder and just around the planning, et cetera?
Well, I think the first thing I think of would be where you're building, right? Understanding the constraints you're going to build to.
Yep.
So for a lot of people that don't know, there's setback constraints.
Yep.
There's utility constraints.
Yep.
There's height constraints. This is really silly. But in the county, there's a solar constraint.
Yep.
Your building can't cast a shadow so far onto your neighbor's property.
Yep.
So there's all these constraints. You need to understand what those are first. And it doesn't take long, right? Within a few hours, a little bit of research, a call to your local building jurisdiction, they'll tell you, hey, here's what your constraints are. Okay. The next thing is your utilities. How far away is it? And are you in rock?
Yep.
Because say we can dig 400 to 500 lineal feet in a day, let's say, if it's good diggable dirt.
Yep.
If it's rock, you might get 25.
Yep.
So understanding what that cost is and where your utilities are coming from, because you could take a $20,000 excavation number and it's 100, literally in the course of weeks.
Yep.
So that's huge in this area and other areas. The next thing would be in the interview process of builders. Let's say you want to hire a builder. Call their references.
Yep.
I tell everybody that. Call them, talk to them, ask them to show you buildings. Send me links. Let me look at what you've actually done. I don't want to see what you showed up and your company painted.
Yep.
I want to see what you did.
Yep.
I want to see that knowledge. And that'll tell you everything you probably need to know. Also, ask them for a few subcontractors because you're going to know if they pay their bills.
Yep.
One of the things in the construction industry a lot of people don't probably understand is we carry costs for a long time, right? So 30 days, used to be typical and actually used to be like 15. You'd bill on the 25th, fund on the 10th, the banks would. Well, then, with interest and everything else over time, it was bill on the 25th to the 1st, you're typically 30 days out. Well, a lot of projects nowadays, you're asked to take it 60 to 90 days, right? And so what a lot of things will happen with that is you can imagine, and let's say you don't have a line of credit. You are your line of credit. So you're constantly leapfrogging, right? You'll see that in this industry, and that's when guys go out of business.
Yep.
And so calling their subcontractors that they like to use saying, hey, how is it to work for so-and-so? Does he pay his bills on time?
Yep.
Because the last thing is you want as a homeowner is a lien on your property.
Yeah.
Because now you've paid twice for a service.
100%. Yeah.
And we've had it happen to us, right? Where we do these large agricultural projects all over the West.
Yep.
And it could be a 10,000 square foot, I don't know, grain storage building, or 120,000 square foot distribution and receiving facility for some sort of bean product.
Yep.
And a lot of times the GCs on those are millwright guys. So the millwright guys then hire a GC to do everything else, which is all the excavation, concrete, the building, XYZ. A lot of those millwright contracts, they're paid in full, like 90 days into a 6-month project.
Yeah.
So they're holding on to your money, and let's say that company goes out of business.
Yeah.
Well, you just carried $1 million, right? Because you're accruing money quickly. That money's not coming through. So understanding, making sure people are paying their bills. The next thing would be asking for submittals. As silly as it is, you might not know what you're looking at, but at least you're going to know what you're getting before it goes in.
Yeah. When you said submittals, it's like, hey, what on a monthly basis, what does it look like from a draw process backup, whatever submittals.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it for me is product submittals. So I want to see
we're talking submittals for all your specs.
Yeah,
so
for all your specs. I want, as a homeowner, or anybody really, if you're just getting into the game, if a builder doesn't know what submittals are, if a builder can't build a schedule, ask them for a schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
And if someone goes, oh yeah, I'll give you a schedule, and they write it on a piece of paper,
you got a signal.
You probably got a red flag going up, right? Or they don't have the ability to, I don't know, they don't know what a shop drawing is, right? Or they're relying on you to lay things out, right? Early on in the process, or they don't understand a bank draw process, or they don't know what a lien release is. If somebody doesn't know what a lien release is, get out of there.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's everything you just said there. It's true, and I think that somebody listening that might be like, holy cow, they're like, that's a lot of different stuff that you have to analyze and take care of. But I think that the key thing there is hire the right people, the professional people, do your due diligence like Duel just said. And then if you want to get into the building game, the ground up game, and you actually want to start it, hire somebody, pay the fee for that, and then watch and learn, because you'll be able to pick up. It sounds maybe complicated or like a lot of acronyms or a lot of paperwork, but once you see it happen, it just takes some discipline, some consistency, professionalism, being organized, and then following through on your communication. We're not, this isn't rocket science here, right? We're building, but
I mean, I think the hardest part is the people. So the sticks and bricks are easy. Yeah. I tell everybody that. We can build anything. The hardest part of my job is people. Yeah. Whether it's my own employees, it's somebody else's employees, it's a developer or a client of ours, or it's their employees. Yeah. The sticks and bricks really are not challenging. Yeah. If you can understand how to read a drawing and you understand processes. Yeah. How to get to C and you can't skip B, right? You got to start at A.
You can't.
Right? Yeah. And so as long as you understand that, it's the stuff that goes around. And that's a great point. If you pay for the fee to watch somebody do it and do it right, it's worth mountains.
It's worth mountains. And just pay attention. Exactly. Pay attention. What are some ways that you can, on the pre-design side, before you actually go to construction drawings or before you start building, what are some ways that you can reduce your costs, cut your budget without cutting quality?
Yeah. So a lot of people on here probably have heard the term like value engineering, or I don't like to use the word cost effective. Yeah. I just don't like that word. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the word you're still the value is there, but you're going with something that might produce the same thing, but you have a better value to it, right? So what we'll do early on, I'll use an example of a project right now we're working on over off Revere. It's 20 high-end units, right? 52,000 square feet, probably going to be around 15 to 17 million, right? They're going to rent these for around $6,000 a month. Yep. And that project on a square foot basis is very expensive. So what we're doing is going through and saying, okay, sticks and bricks. The finish type, we have to have this. How can we still achieve the same finish type, but what happens behind the wall structurally? Yep. Can we get away with more efficient products? Can we get away with this type of header? Can we get away with running our power in the wall, so all of our home runs, which a home run, guys, is a dedicated circuit to an individual series of outlets, let's say. Can we shorten that run? Because if you can shorten it by 20 feet 100 times, that's substantial cost in material and labor. So then you really get into those little things. Yeah. And then let's say, for an example, we're looking at something that's being imported from Italy, which happens a lot. Like it sounds silly, but we import things. And can we find it domestic? Yep. Or where can we find it that might be stocked? Yep. Right. And so we're not paying for those shipping costs. We're not paying for those costs. The hardest thing for me is storing things. Yep. paying somebody to source something kills me.
Yeah.
This just-in-time delivery, this just-in-time idea of things arriving as you need them, it's a huge benefit. And usually the cost savings are massive. So value engineering is everything from what you don't see, so it's in the walls structurally, to what you see at the end.
Yep.
Across the board.
Yep.
So a lot of times, a lot of projects, you can easily find 5%.
Yep.
Sometimes you can find 10.
Yep.
Right? If you really look and you know where to look and how to do it. Here's an example. On the 84 unit, we got into it. And as we're pushing out on the units, the buildings on the east side, we realized that the geotech report had said that the soil type was, I forget what it was. I think it was like 5 feet down till you hit bearing surface, which was basalt over there, Well, on those north buildings, we were hitting basalt 2 feet down. So we contacted the engineers. We said, hey guys, if you guys come out, we believe we can change all the concrete design on these upper buildings to this. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, we're going to save, I don't know, let's use an example, 100 yards of building.
Yep.
Well, 100 yards of building at $200 a yard, it adds up. And then, hey, by the way, we noticed that these ceiling heights are 8'4". Well, if we buy standard 92 and 5 stud packs, we're going to get a 7'11" ceiling, and we're not going to have any fall off on our material. We can buy standard length studs, never cut a single one of them.
Yeah.
Well, we just saved X doing it that way. And then we go through and we say, hey, we see that the flooring type is calling out for and I have nothing against it, a full floating, like, I don't know, an LVT snap lock floor.
Yep.
Hey, that's a great idea. However, in our experience, from a management standpoint, if you're going to own something for a long time and lease it and not just turn and burn it.
Yeah.
I always suggest a glue down LVT.
Yeah.
Simply because it's maintenance free, essentially. If someone scratches it, you take a heat gun, you heat it up, you replace it. Well, that's probably going to cost you less money in the long run, and the material's less.
Yep.
Now granted, there's a few things you do around it, but it still saves you money. So we look at these different things literally from the concrete up.
Yeah.
And boom, all of a sudden there's 10%. So on 10% on, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, pretty soon 20 million. We were working on 192 units behind your project that since has gone on hold. We looked at that one, and that was like 57 million. And that project, the design team is not from here locally. They're from California. They designed it to a California standard. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, let's talk about this. This is a little bit of a segue. You need to know where you're building and what those trades are used to.
Yep.
That's the other thing. So if we're building in California what they designed, you can get for an efficient price because that's what they're used to building. You bring that design up here, all of a sudden everyone's like, this is a unicorn.
Yeah.
This is going to cost this amount of money. Yeah. So you go, no, it's not, you guys. We're going to change the design. The product is still the same, right? So we value engineer it, but to how these local guys are used to building.
Yeah.
And you can apply that anywhere. When we go to Idaho, we go to Washington, you basically change the design to what that group of individuals is used to building, right? Otherwise, you're going to pay a premium for something that doesn't return you anymore.
Yeah.
100%.
The point is this, when I hear all that, right? Pay for the expertise. If you're a developer and you're going to hire a builder, right? To gain everything that Duel just said there, right? That's taken him his whole lifetime plus his father's lifetime to learn. That's so much experience that they've built up through trial and error. Yeah. Right? Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And they've now got this formula where they really understand how to build buildings, cut costs without cutting any quality. So pay for that expertise. Like we said, so maybe Duel wasn't the lowest bidder on the project, but so we pay him a little bit more for all of his expertise. And then he found us ways in concrete to save money, in lumber to save money. He found us ways to speed up. Maybe we paid more money for the framers, but we got it done. What would have taken 8 weeks to frame, we got done in 4 weeks, right? So you have to pay for that expertise and be willing to put up the money because it's worth it. It is worth it all day long. And
I like the idea on something of that size to think about what you're paying on interest.
Yeah.
Right. What's the holding cost for that? Right. So if you can reduce that construction loan interest by 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, all of a sudden the guy who was maybe a little bit high is now actually less in the long run for what you're paying for that money. Yeah. The idea I use too is to save money, you have to be diverse. And to be diverse, you have to have people that understand what that means. And I mean it in, there's so many communities that we work with, right? Across Oregon, again, I'll use Washington, Idaho, North Dakota, these different areas, and having the ability to lean on people that you trust, right? So I think you've met Sergio. Sergio's a guy I trust with my life. I've known him since I was 16 years old. He worked for my dad. I went off to other things, came back. That guy I trust with my life. Yeah. That guy couldn't speak any English when he moved here. Yeah. That's the guy who goes to every one of our family events, right? But we all trust him. He is a fabulous individual, but what he also brings to the table is another community that helps us succeed, right? So I've got guys that work for me that speak no English. And I love it because they work so hard, but they also work for the guy that leads them. And that guy is Sergio. So each one of these other guys on the job, it's not just me that these guys are working for. It's for the guys that you hire to be leaders. Yeah. Right. So the Dave on that job, the guys that worked on that job, they don't know me that well. Yeah. Right. They see me, but the guy that's leading the job is who really everyone respects. Yeah. Right.
Or doesn't.
Or doesn't, right? They don't, because there's a problem. Yeah. But each one of those individuals has to lead and get people to be there. So we have the Sergios of the world and we have the Daves of the world. Two different management styles, two different ways to work. And ultimately they both accomplish the same thing in the same amount of time. Yeah. Right?
100%. So on the topic of cutting cost, when you're hiring a general contractor, like I said, hire somebody like Duel who has the experience. Spend the extra money there. And then from a developer side, just a trick that I use, that we look at is on the design side, everything is bid out in square footage, right? A lot of stuff is bid out in square footage. So I always ask myself, can I get the same programming? Meaning, can I get 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, or 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, whatever programming I want to get, but can I reduce the square footage a little bit without cutting the quality, right? So if I can go from a unit that's 975 square feet per unit, and I can get that down to 850 square feet per unit, still have 2 bedroom, 2 bath programming, I'm able to cut out a lot of construction costs just purely in material, in labor, in bid. And so that's another clever way to, as a developer, to really think about and plan for cutting your cost out of your project before you ever even get started.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. How do you still achieve that, but you're not paying the same?
Be careful though, because next thing you don't want tiny little rooms. So it's
but I mean, if you think about it, every square foot counts. Like, let's use the example of, let's say your building's 40 feet tall. Can you get 3 feet out of it? If you get 3 feet out of it, that's 3 feet less of pipe. Yeah. Right, going vertical. That's 3 feet less of siding, 3 feet less of insulation, paint, drywall. And people don't put that in perspective. But when it comes to scale of economy, is when it matters.
Exactly.
Right. And that's when you can really start to see these differences happen. You know, you might go, oh, well, I want that 3 feet. Well, that 3 feet might be worth $100,000, $200,000. Yeah. But you're not going to get any more return for 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. You really got to think about it. On a single family house, let's say a single family house production style, it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. You could fit that in 1,800 square feet. Or if you're smart with smart design, you could fit that in 1,600 square feet. So you cut out 200 square feet, 200 times, let's call it, what's it cost to build right now?
Well, shoot, if we're doing a production home, let's say you're into it $220 a foot.
Yeah, make it easy at 200 for me. So, so 200 square feet that we cut out at $200 a square foot, that's 40 grand that we saved right there by making that one decision, right?
Yeah. And you know what? And that's huge. When you think of it like that, and you do that time and time again, like let's say you want to get into this and you really want to start building spec houses. Yeah. You find that formula. That's if you can sell them at 1,600 square feet for the same price you can sell them at 1,800 square feet, you're saving 40 grand every time. That's massive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it won't directly translate like completely, but it'll definitely translate. And so that's those little tips and tricks to think about as you get into design. Okay.
I think the other tip and trick will be knowing your audience, knowing who you're selling to. Yeah. So there's markets, right? So $1 million and up is mainly cash. Yeah. Right. We all know that. There's not a lot of people going. And it's still going strong. Yeah. Like right now, we're building spec houses that are selling for 1.5, 1.6 and they're cash. Yeah. But if you try to sell something for like 650, 758, that's a hard market right now. Yeah. But if you can get it down into that 450, so it's kind of weird. Knowing your market, knowing your audience, knowing your area is huge.
Yeah, don't bring the wrong product to the market because you might get stuck.
Exactly.
Then you'll be upset as well. I agree with you. Yeah. And that one comes from studying your local area and then trying to it's like being creative in real estate, right? So you're really trying to begin with the end in mind, think about what does the end customer want? And then that's what I like about real estate too, is like, how can I provide a product that is really good for that price range. It's going to differentiate me where people want to come and they want to live here, and I can do it in a cost-effective, smart way where we can make money, continue to do it. We don't have to make huge amounts of money here. Just hitting singles and doubles to stay in the game that we love is a great way to build wealth, right? You don't have to go for these huge home runs.
Oh, exactly.
Just hit singles and doubles over and over.
I'll put it in perspective for you, like singles and doubles. I love that term that you use whenever we talk, hitting singles and doubles.
Yeah.
We might go do a $20 million project, and in the same breath, down the road, I'm doing a $16,000 job.
Yeah.
I'm doing a $20,000 job, and then we're doing another $10 million. But
does that feel weird?
No.
To shift or what? No,
and it doesn't.
It just takes what it takes.
It just takes what it takes, right? I mean, you have to surround yourself with good people. The only way you're going to succeed is being around good people.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with those individuals and understanding that you're never too good.
Yeah.
You know, it's the guys who I see fail in this industry forget where they came from.
Yeah.
You know, you have to treat each job just as serious as the next.
Yeah.
Right. A $20,000 job sometimes, honestly, takes as much work up front as $1 million job.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, right? You get into that, but surrounding yourself with the people, you know, by no means is this a one-man show ever. And anyone who says it, I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
You've clearly never done this.
One of my great mentors, he told me, you know, it takes just as much time to do a big deal as it does a small deal. So he told me, he's like, so you tell me what you want to focus on. You want to do big deals or you want to do small deals, right? It takes just as much time. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, when you elevate to larger deals, it's actually opposite of what you would think. There's less competition, there's more sophistication, and you're able to get these deals done in a much better way than when you're fighting for that smaller deal, because everyone's fighting for that, right?
I think you hit. There's more sophistication's huge.
Yeah.
You have people who have been there and done that with big deals.
Yeah.
The small deals, I mean, we'll always do them, but you have a lot of people who haven't been there and done that. There's a reason why it's a small deal, right? You get into these bigger deals. Let's use the example of you and me sitting in the room with our attorneys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We mainly all just joked and laughed because everyone in that room had been there and done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the words that David Allen, one of our good friends, said in that meeting was, guys, it doesn't matter what this says. Yeah. Ultimately, if you fail, you fail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then this is going to get thrown in your face. So don't fail.
Yeah, don't fail.
You know, have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the goal, I remember sitting there, and the goal was obviously in a business partnership, right? You're building, like you said, we were building this personal relationship because we're both young entrepreneurs. We're both having kids. We're in this interesting phase of life together. And then at the same time, we're both trying to build businesses. It's my first major deal putting together. You know, you've built plenty of big buildings, but this was a bigger one for Christiansen Contracting.
For my family's company, this was large.
Yeah. And so you have to be smart and intelligent in business and in partnerships and hash through the details. Because the whole goal, we were sitting there with the lawyers and we hashed through every detail, had good, strong conversations, direct, kind, but negotiations about what needed to happen. And then what's great is the whole point was, hey, we're going to get through this contract, then we're going to put it away, and hopefully we never have to get it out.
That, you know what? That's huge. And I think the big thing is never be afraid to ask the questions.
Yeah.
In this industry, this idea of conflict. Yeah. In my opinion, conflict is good.
I agree.
Right? There's no such thing as bad conflict unless there's violence involved.
Yeah.
Right? Which we never condone.
Or negative.
Yeah, or negative. But conflict, asking good questions, challenging people to understand. Yeah. Right? I am all for it all day long. So, and I think I'm so used to it, and so are you. For us, those are easy conversations. Yeah. Like, no problem. Like, let's talk about this. Let's get through this. Here's X, Y, Z. Whereas and you have to be comfortable with that. To really succeed in this industry, you have to be comfortable with having the difficult conversations.
And they're not always easy to have, but they're always worth it. You have to do it.
So worth it. Yeah. Like, I'll use the example. For me would be, and I always ask about money. How am I getting paid? Yeah. I have no problem asking somebody that, right? In my younger years, I did asking, hey, how are we getting paid? Yeah. You know, are you going to fund it out of pocket? If you are you comfortable putting your money in escrow? Yeah. So we make sure we get paid? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I don't know if partway through the project, you decide you're going to go buy another house, I don't know, in the Bahamas.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
You just spent your money you set aside for the project, but unbeknownst to us, you let us finish the job, but that money's now gone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's having those conversations that sometimes feel maybe uncomfortable, but they're really important to have.
Really important.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Construction's got some funny stories to them, and you've told me some good ones.
Dude, where do you want to go?
Just give me a couple good, funny stories, just things that have happened. And,
I've got some fabulous ones.
Yeah.
Probably a really good one is it's like a movie scene. So I'm doing a project in downtown Boise, and we're what was that? Front Street, Main Street? I don't remember. And anyways. We're developing down there. We're doing this 5 over 2.5, which is 2.5 stories of post-tension concrete with 5 stories of wood above it. Great project. And out front, we're on Main, and we're they don't do asphalt down there where we were at. It was all concrete. It's part of the historical district, and this entity called CCDC pays for it. So we're pouring concrete, right? Roads are all shut down. We just get the mud down, and all of a sudden we're standing there, we're looking. One of the guys starts going, "Hey!" Jumping up and down. This poor older woman somehow managed to go around all these big barricades, right? Road closed signs, there's all this shit.
She didn't care. She's like, I'm going through.
Downtown Boise, mind you, out of all places. I mean, busy as all heck. And she panicked and she pins it.
Yeah, so rather than hit pause, she pins it?
She pins it. And I mean, she sends it into this fresh concrete. I think it was like a Toyota Camry, the old grandma car, right? You imagine like that grandma Camry you always see that. Just sends it into the concrete, and then she's just, beyond herself. I think she's in shock, has no idea what's happening. And so we had the crane on site. How did we get that car out of there?
You craned her.
Use the crane, baby. Use a tower crane, swung it over there, strapped it, because we were worried if we tried to pull it, it would just rip her undercarriage out, because she literally buried it in 10 inches of concrete. Right? So before it could dry, we lifted her out of there, set her car down, and there was a car wash like a block away. And one of the guys, I think the guy working for me at the time was Brad with me. He ran it down there, pressure washed the whole thing off, you can't make that up.
You can't make that up. That's a good one. You told me that when I saw the picture too, because first I was like, it can't be that.
Yeah, I got photos.
And I know I saw the picture, and she is buried in that.
Buried. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I've got so many.
I know I like that one a lot. What do you say to somebody who hears your story, who also is extremely passionate about construction? Maybe they've also been working in the construction industry their whole life as well, and they have this fire inside of them. They want to start their own thing, but they just have something blocking them. What do you say to somebody that's in that position?
Don't undervalue yourself. Don't undervalue who you are. Don't undervalue what you can achieve. I think that's the biggest thing. I see too many people who could succeed, but they undervalue who they are and what they can accomplish. Yeah. Right. Don't work with somebody who makes you feel like you can't do that. We've all worked with people who made us feel less than we are. Well, fuck those people. Yeah. That's how I look at it. You know what? I will outdo you. I might not know more than you, but I will outwork you. I will research the information. I will become perfect at it. So for those people that are really on the fence, I would say dive in. Don't ever be the smartest guy in the room, because if you are, there's a problem, right? You need to surround yourself with people you can constantly learn from. I'm constantly learning nonstop. I'll be the first person to tell you that. Never want to be that guy. That's why I hire guys that are better than me. In my eyes, maybe not in somebody else's eyes, but in my eyes, that individual has something to teach me, and I'm going to learn, right? So I think you just got to dive in, but don't undervalue who you are. Yeah. The biggest thing.
Man, I think that's a great piece of advice there.
Yeah.
What's a book? It can be business, it can be personal, it can be anything. What's a book that has really influenced you?
I read a lot of books when I was in school, and they were okay, I think. And it was this individual. It's called The Art of War in business. Yeah. And this individual who gave this book to me, I didn't necessarily get along with, right? But he was an aspiring leader. And we butted heads, and he was the kind of leader who used force, right? He'd walk into the room and he would try to demean you. Well, him and I didn't get along because I don't like bullies. If you try to bully me, it's not going to work. I'm sorry. Like, that does not work for me. But he gave me a book, and it was called The Art of War in Business. I can't remember the author's name, but that book, that was an amazing read. Yeah. The Art of War. We'll link that. And so that was, what happened with you and him then? He actually lost his job. Okay. Because he was a poor leader. Yeah. Because he had good qualities, don't get me wrong, but he led by force. Yeah. And most people do not respond well in this day and age if you try to make them do something. It's that idea of more with honey than with vinegar. Yeah. And I find that to hold true. Yeah. 100%. Right. You got to treat people the way you want to be treated. Yeah. That simple thing we learn as kids holds true your entire life.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like my mom used to always tell me that treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And all the time I'm like, I'll just sit there. I'd be mad at her or something. I mean, she'd be like, just treat people the way you want to be treated. And I would think to myself, like, and then it's funny.
And have respect, right? Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, my dad always preached to me and my brothers, and we broke all the rules, right? Like we were those kids that were like, we grew up here. We knew everybody. Like we're just in our blood. We're just going to be little rebels, you know? But he always said, it's not about what you did. It's about what you do after you did it. That's going to define who you are and how you're remembered.
Wow.
And I remember that. Like, I'm like 12 years old hearing this, right? And it was like, wow, that stuck with me. And I remember the idea of respect. Respect everyone around you. Treat them with kindness, regardless, right? And that'll come back around tenfold. It's the idea. And this is another one. He's got so many one-liners. This one too. I mean, I say it to my kids now, sometimes it's better off to remain silent than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. I have sat in more meetings and just was quiet and just listened to people remove all doubt, right? They were saying things and you immediately saw through them. If they just would have kept their mouth shut, I would have respected them more. But because they opened it, I went, oh, that guy doesn't know what the fuck's going on here. Okay, I understand now what that meant as I got older. But as a young man, or a young woman, anybody, you think you're talking with the world, and then as you start to realize you are nobody, you're very humbled very quickly,
Yeah, we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot by listening. And I like you just gave us a series of great quotes to go by. And, I've got on the respect side, I've got a lot of respect for you, what you guys are building. I know that if anybody is in Central Oregon or any of the states, I mean, you guys are in Central Oregon, you're in Oregon, Idaho, Washington,
North Dakota, go to Nevada.
Anybody who is looking to develop land and needs a general contracting partner, you need to reach out to Duel and his team, Christiansen Contracting. They performed outperformed anything that you could have thought of on the 84 unit. We will definitely be doing more projects together. I feel very grateful to have both a friendship and a business partnership together in that way. And, I really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you on again sometime, but just want to thank you for your time.
You guys.
It's been a blast. And
it's been a crazy ride. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I appreciate it so much. You guys are awesome too. And again, this is the kind of relationship where we're now friends. We're good friends. I've held your kids. You've held my kids. Not anyone gets to hold my kids.
I know. Yeah, it's been good. And we'll, be the first of many more projects we'll do together. Thanks for coming on the podcast. And with that, we will see you on the next one, baby.